Welcome to Around the 412. We are part of AllSteelers.com and proudly presented by Crowworthy, where winners are serving winners coast to coast with sports, gambling, fantasy, and more. You can follow Crowworthy at Crowworthy Takes on Twitter, and you can visit us at crowworthy.com, where you can check out the Crowworthy Pittsburgh City page for podcasts just like this one, blogs, and more. I'm Tyler, and with me as always is Smitty. What's going on, man? This is the first show in like a month that we've done just the two of us.
You asked me about that when I said that we had to put off our show with the Yinzers. Shout out to them, by the way. They're having Mike Tomlin's wife, Kaya Tomlin, on their show tonight. When we had to put that off for another week, you asked me, you're like, wait a minute. When was the last time that we did a show with just the two of us? So I went back and looked. I think it was like June 28th. So,
yeah, we had Lil Durag. We had Lil Durag, Alex Steele. Then we had Jesse on, and then we had who was last week?
Daniel.
Daniel. Yeah,
Daniel Valenta.
It's funny. I remember all the other ones, not last week.
I know. But yeah, I know we had a good run there. Go and check out those episodes. If you haven't, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Leave us a like. Leave us a comment. Even if you are watching this back later on, please be sure to do those things. Yo, the boss Sanchez is in the chat already. Yo. How excited are we? I know it's the preseason. How excited are we that Steelers football is back? Like they play an actual football game tomorrow.
I know. It's pretty surreal. It feels like yesterday they were getting their crap beat in by the Browns in that playoff game.
Oh, had to bring it up.
Listen, it's crazy because it seems like that wasn't that long ago. I feel like the offseason, the draft flew by. I mean, the draft feels like it wasn't that long ago. And meanwhile, that was like going on 3 months ago now. And yeah, Steelers play a game tomorrow. Granted, it is a preseason game. It is a Hall of Fame game, which is probably the least important preseason game of them all. But still, the fact that they're going to suit up and run out and play a real football game on
against
TV,
against
another team, it's exciting. It means football's getting close. We're about a little over a month away from like real football starting.
This is why the NFL is king, because it's like regardless of what time of year it is for football, there's not much, if at all, depending on how into the sport you are, that there's like a dead period. Because like as soon as the season ends, you're already talking about like the scouting process for the draft, which we love to do, all the mock drafts. In a normal year, we would have been down in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, right after. So these things all lead up to it. Then you have the draft. And then you have a very short window of time before rookie camp, mini camp. Like it all just comes together so fast that there's a very short window of time where it's like literally nothing going on in the NFL. If you're a diehard fan, there's always something going on. But yeah, tomorrow we actually get to see the Steelers play a football game. We aren't going to see Ben. We're not going to see Cam Hayward. We're not going to see Watt. I know that some people even like misconstrued Tomlin's quote about Najee Harris. Like, so his actual, what he said, and I heard, Dale Lawley of DK's site kind of reiterate this, was that he wants him to prepare as if he's playing 4 preseason games. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see him tomorrow. Now, that's going to be interesting to me. Where are you at with that, by the way? Because I didn't have this on the topic list, but we might as well just put it out there. Do you want to see Najee Harris play at all tomorrow night?
Honestly, I don't care. I don't think that he needs to play. We know going into this and based off of what we've seen in camp so far, he is the Steelers starter, and he's clearing away the top running back in that.
He's not competing for anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't really mind if he doesn't play all 4 preseason games. Like he's just one of those guys, even though he is a rookie, he's one of those guys. It's like, what's the point? Why is he going to get hurt? We know that he's going to play in the other 3 probably. And I get that you probably want to get him acclimated with the like playbook and with the offensive line and all that sort of stuff. But like he has 3 other games to do that. I don't really think it's a necessity to have him play tomorrow night.
I think I'm on board with you because everybody can say they want to see him, get some touches, especially, you mentioned it being a new offense with Matt Canada, a brand new offensive line. We're not going to see most of those guys anyway. It is cool that we're seeing Kendrick Green start the game. Which you hope is the day 1 center for the Steelers. But it's like everybody can say that they want to see him play, and then what happens, knock on wood, if something goes wrong, he gets hurt in this game, in a meaningless football game. Which you're taking the risk anytime that you suit up, but it's just that's why guys don't play in the preseason typically that are like locked into those spots. So I don't know where I'm at with it. Like if they do, fine, whatever. But if they were to not, I definitely don't have an issue with it. The name that I've already seen in the comments like 3 times is James Pierre, along with Dwayne Haskins. And those are 2 guys that definitely we're excited to see. I'm curious to see how much run we get from James Pierre tomorrow night, because he's not locked into a starting spot by any means. He's having one of the best camps, though, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I'm saying that, out of anybody on the Steelers roster right now. You talk about what's going on Steelers training camp, the names that you hear right away are James Pierre, Alex Highsmith, Anthony McFarland, Rico Bussey, who's Stephen Denmark, Buddy Johnson. Like those are the names that people are talking about right now, having really good training camps. Kalen Balazs has been one of the best in backs on backers, and we saw that in person as well. But James Pierre tomorrow night is a guy that I think like can put a stamp on being that other guy on the outside with a really good performance. Now I'm curious to see how much he's going to play, though. I love the comment that somebody put in here. It says James Pierre greater than prime Deion Sanders, to be honest.
that could be true. From what we've seen in this camp so far, I think that it's pretty clear that James Pierre is edging himself out as like the at least quarterback or cornerback 3. He might get that starting role on the outside, which would make it an interesting situation with Cam Sutton, because we entered this year expecting Cam Sutton to be the outside corner alongside Joe Hayden. But if James Pierre looks good on the outside, I don't know why you wouldn't have him on the outside and then have Cam Sutton go inside and try to make your defense like it was in years prior. Now I know that they've had Brooks Jr. Work out with it on the inside as well, so maybe that mixes up what they wanted to do with him. Yeah, they're trying to test out guys to find that Mike Hilton replacement. But if James Pierre is adequate enough to play on the outside, and if Cam Sutton is okay with still playing inside, and I mean, not to say he would never play outside as well. I mean, we saw him play outside a little bit last year as well when we had Steven Nelson and Joe Hayden on the outside. So I think there's multiple scenarios that could play out with these cornerbacks. But James Pierre is definitely pushing for the starting role going into the season.
I think when you talk about the question of what's it going to look like in nickel, I think is James Pierre better on the outside than Antoine Brooks Jr., Arthur Millette is inside? Like who is going to win that? And that is what decides what they're going to look like in nickel. You're going to see all these guys when they go into dime. But I mean, right now it's going to be hard to keep James Pierre off the field. Like, I mean, with what he's doing, I understand that it's very early in the process. He could have a terrible rest of camp, terrible preseason, and completely change that. But from what we're seeing right now, how do you keep James Pierre off the field just to say, because Cam Sutton has earned the job on the outside, and, what are you getting from Brooks Jr. Arthur Millette inside? Because not that I'm doubting those guys by any means, but I think what it comes down to is James Pierre has just been that good that he's earned that on the outside, and what Cam Sutton can be inside.
Yeah, and playing James Pierre on the outside isn't a slight to Cam Sutton whatsoever. I think it's you putting your defense in the best situation you can possible, and having both of those guys on the field at the same time with Pierre on the outside and Sutton on the inside, that would be the best case for that defense.
Let's look at it as let's try to relate this to the offense, right? Because the whole conversation with Juju is he wants to play more on the outside, but if the offense is best suited with him being in the slot, that's how the offense needs to operate. If Cam Sutton wants to play on the outside on defense, but we're best suited for him to play on the inside, that's what needs to happen. And I don't think Cam Sutton's a guy that's going to push back against that. Just I don't think Juju's going to be a guy that pushes back against that on offense. But again, like you said, it's just about putting everybody in the best position. And if James Pierre continues to play like this, I can keep saying it over and over until I'm blue in the face. You can't take him off the field on Sundays, and he's going to be starting opposite of Joe Hayden on the outside.
Yeah, and in a situation like that, you hope that, and not that I'm saying that Cam Sutton has an ego whatsoever. I don't think he does, but that's what a position where you'd have to put your ego above or under everything else, or not above. You'd have to put your ego aside no matter what, and just do what's best for your team and do what's best for that defense. Because at the end of the day, it's not about you; it's about winning. And if that's what's the best case for your team to win, you have to do it.
Do you remember, and Zach just put this in the comments, so shout out to him. I don't want to make it seem like I just thought of this myself. How much Pierre sticking out is reminiscent of Hilton's first camp? Everyone sees it, fans plus media. To Zach's point there, I don't recall like this much hype being centered around a guy who's played 30 some snaps. Like it's awesome to see. But at the same time, like, yeah, I don't know that I would say it's more than Mike Hilton's first camp. Like that was more so just crazy because the dude was like working at Foot Locker literally before we pulled him out of that and put him on a football field. But like, I don't recall a situation where everybody just felt so confident in a guy, like I said, played 30 some snaps last year. Like, okay, this guy can start in the NFL on the outside in the AFC North for a team that has playoff aspirations. Like, we're putting a lot of stock in this guy.
Yeah, and it's crazy for how little the sample size was and how much hype he got off that sample size. But he's lived up to the expectation so far, at least in a camp setting. We haven't been disappointed with what we've seen. He hasn't been getting beat by guys. He's made a lot of flashy plays. But we'll see how he performs in game time. But it's been very encouraging so far. And I think if James Pierre is good, because a lot of the questions that we had for this defense, like we've said on multiple shows, including our own, is we had questions about edge depth, we had questions about middle linebacker depth, and we had questions about corner/secondary depth. And if James Pierre is good, not that it like reassures the depth a whole lot if you're going to be using Pierre and Sutton, but at least you know you're going to have just more than Sutton and Hayden to rely on. And because really going into this year, like we had hopes for Pierre, but he was still a question mark. But going into this camp and going into the season, he's proved that he could play. So it helps the cornerback room a lot.
That's what I was going to say. Is you said it's a question mark. To me, if James Pierre is good, shows he can stick on the outside and be that other guy, all it does is answer that question that we had coming in. And again, then it would be like, okay, now what about the offensive line? Because the edge depth, bringing a guy like Melvin Ingram, I mean, we could talk about that forever, I feel like, with everything that he's going to be able to do for this defense, the multiple alignments that you can play him in and just tell him, hey, rush the passer. To actually have something there, a proven piece behind Watt and Highsmith.
And apparently tight end.
Hey, we'll see. So if James Pierre is able to be not obviously he's not that veteran like Melvin Ingram, but if he can answer that question for us in the cornerback room, then that's massive. And then we turn our attention to the offensive line, which was a big question. So
honestly, that's the biggest question mark right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to talk about Haskins a little bit, but while we're on the topic of offensive line, like we haven't seen what we expect to be the offensive line this year at all together.
No,
so far in training camp. And I understand the Steelers have a little bit more time because they're playing that extra preseason game. They had a week before of training camp before literally anybody else reported. So like they have the extra time and everything like that. But when you're talking about a completely new offensive line, a new offensive line coach, a new offensive coordinator, like these guys, the clock's ticking right now for them to get on the field together and really start gelling before, we kick off the regular season in Buffalo.
Yeah, I think that at some point you have to get these guys together. Even the one that we were at, they weren't running Dotson with the first team. I don't know if that's still because he didn't know the playbook as well, but I know that eventually, whether it's in a game or not, you're going to want to get those guys together, which I would assume would still be Chooks, Dotson, Kendrick Green. You want to be your starting center, and then Trey Turner and Banner.
Right. You know what's funny is actually the question that I'm having now, man. Like I don't know if you saw, who was it? Jeff Schwartz was talking about it with Dave Dameshek, and I can't remember who he does that show with. But they were talking about Okorafor, and they actually said Dan Moore Jr. like that. From what he's hearing, is going to end up being the starting left tackle for the Steelers to start the season. And in my opinion, the only way that happens is if Okorafor actually has an injury, like that we don't really know fully about. And that's the reason he hasn't practiced yet. And, because there's no way that they came into this training camp and we're thinking Dan Moore Jr. has a legit shot to win the left tackle job.
I don't think so, because that would be saying that you're going to take he was the fourth round pick, fourth round rookie, and starting him at left tackle day one. No team really does that. I mean, there's even guys that are first round tackles that you don't start at left tackle day one. So I don't see that happening like you, unless Chooks is hurt, because Chooks, I feel like, was molded to be this left tackle. He was the starting right tackle last year. As soon as Villanueva gone, it was basically like his job to take over.
he was fine at right tackle, but he was supposed to be left tackle, and he wasn't playing left tackle here because we already had an incumbent left tackle. That's the only reason. Like you said, he was kind of being groomed to be the left tackle of the future. Well, here we are in the future. Al Villanueva's moved on. He's in this spot now. Jeremiah said that stuff about DM being a second round guy in a different year, but still it'd be wild. Yeah, I mean, yeah, to that point, this definitely was a loaded offensive line class. So going in the fourth round is like going in the second or third round in any other year, in my opinion. And obviously Daniel Jeremiah, who's one of the best covering the draft. But yeah, I still think like in an ideal situation for the Steelers, it's the lineup that we've set: Okorafor, Dotson, Green, Turner, Banner. And that's what they want to line up week 1 in Buffalo. But due to injuries, we have no idea if that's going to be the case. Like, and other things. But right now, to me, like we've seen Green on the field a lot. I think that he's going to be the day one starter at center. And other than that, it's like, I think Banner's slowly working his way back. He's done more and more as it's going on. So I like the way that he's progressing. And I'm confident that he's going to continue to ramp that up. But it's like, until we see Okorafor with the first team, until we see Kevin Dotson with the first team, Trey Turner really hasn't done much. Like, how can we just, pencil these guys in? Because if there's actually some legit injury or something, like concern there.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not September 12th yet. It's only August 4th. But still, eventually you want to get these guys some time together. Because it takes some chemistry to be a good offensive line. It's not like you could just plunk guys together and they just naturally fit. And not even just for the offensive line, just for the offense as a whole. You're going to want to get Ben used to that offensive line unit. You're going to want to get Najee Harris used to the offensive line unit. I mean, there's more in play than just the linemen playing well together.
I'm glad you said about Ben because, like, we saw it in person, some issues with snaps because he's going under center more, and obviously Kendrick Green only having 4 starts at center. Like, there were some fumbles. We saw 2 or 3. So like that part of it's been pretty ugly in camp as well. So they need all the reps that they can get. As soon as they can get their starting 5 on the field, the better. A name that's been brought up a lot here is Dwayne Haskins in the comments. And I just want to get your thoughts on this because I know, we said on the All Steelers talk with Noah and Donnie way back when, like, we said on our show, we don't think that Haskins has a legit shot to beat out Rudolph for that backup spot. I want to go through and delete that footage because my mind has changed on that. Like, it legit could be an open competition right now. And I don't know if it's more so Haskins turning it into that or Rudolph to this point looking so bad in training camp that he's coming down towards Haskins as opposed to Haskins elevating.
I think that it could be a little bit of both. We have seen Mason underperforming in this camp, and that's not going to help him.
Well, I do want to say the one caveat here is, and we saw it there as well while we were there, like Mason running with the ones because, and Ben did do some stuff when we were there, but when Ben has a day off, it's Mason running with the ones, Haskins with the twos. We haven't seen a whole lot of Haskins with the ones. It's been either Rudolph with the ones, Haskins with the twos, or them both with the twos. So on days where Rudolph's with the one and Haskins with the twos, I think you kind of have to take that into consideration as how, they're both looking.
Yeah. But overall, I think Mason hasn't looked up to par for what we would expect as the backup quarterback. And Haskins has overperformed. And I feel like it's a statement from Haskins saying, like, I'm here to win this job as the backup quarterback. But I also think it's something that you and I are very, very guilty of, and a lot of other people, that we kind of just forgot that this guy was drafted like 15th overall, like a year displaced from last year. And this guy's very talented. So I feel like going into this camp, he had a chip on his shoulder. He wanted to prove to everybody that he still got it and could be the quarterback. And I feel like he's not even just fighting to be the quarterback for the backup for this year. He's also showing the Steelers and other teams watching him that, hey, I'm still here. I could be your starting quarterback for the future. And I think that's what he's fighting for, along with being the backup this year.
Yeah, I don't think that he could have come into a better spot because I would not have wanted him. Like, if Ben goes down this year, I don't really trust anybody else on the roster to go out there and win games for the Steelers. Maybe the defense is still going to be good enough that they could have like a 2019 type season, but whatever. But what I'm getting at is I think a year under Ben, in a year, just with with Mike Tomlin, with Matt Canada, just in this organization and not in Washington, is going to do him wonders. If everything else is in the right place, if he's mentally there, I don't think that he could have gone to a better spot than Pittsburgh to try to rejuvenate his career. And when I'm saying rejuvenate his career, like you said, he was drafted in 2019. Like it's not that far removed, but it's just the turmoil that happened in Washington is in such a short stretch. And let's not sugarcoat it either. He was bad on the field too. Like it's not like everything he did off the field is the only reason that he's not there. Like if his play would have outweighed that, then that would have been the case. Like if he was good enough, they would have looked past that stuff and he'd still be in Washington. But I think that when you talk about him coming to Pittsburgh now and feeling like he actually has a shot here, post Ben era, like competing with Mason for this QB1 job post Ben to be the first guy. Like you mentioned chip on his shoulder, and it's crazy to say like as a first round 15th overall pick you have a chip on your shoulder, but with how quickly the league in Washington specifically has brushed him aside, he does have that chip on his shoulder. So it's going to be very interesting to see what he does in this preseason. He's the most intriguing player to me in this preseason, like above everybody else that I've mentioned. I've mentioned James Pierre. There's a lot of guys that I'm looking forward to watching, but nobody trumps Dwayne Haskins just because there's that first round appeal with a change of scenery with everything that this guy's been through in just a couple years in the league.
And it isn't just guys like you and me that are raving about him. It's the Steelers organization as well. It's Mike Tomlin. It's Ben Roethlisberger that's been talking about Dwayne Haskins and how much how good he looks. And I feel like this is just a win-win scenario no matter what for the Steelers. Because on one hand, if he sucks and he turns out to be terrible, then they signed him for what, league minimum or something like that.
He's on a reserves contract. He's making like $800,000 or something.
Yeah, so it's like nothing. They signed him for basically nothing. But if he's good, best case scenario, you found your successor to Ben Roethlisberger because he was a first-round quarterback 2 years ago.
It's essentially it's better than having a quarterback on a rookie deal. Because if he was on his regular rookie deal, he'd been making a few $1 million. And that's when you have that championship window, is you want to build around that rookie quarterback before you pay them. You don't want to be in this spot like we're going to see. I don't want to say it, a couple teams in the division, the Browns and Ravens, when they got to pay Baker and Lamar Jackson, and we're going to see what their rosters look like. If we can somehow manage to get a franchise quarterback out of Dwayne Haskins, because our money's going to T.J. Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick, that's the best case scenario.
Yeah, and imagine telling yourself this 2 years ago, because I remember saying specifically on our show that, he was your guy. He was your quarterback one in that draft.
Ohio State, yeah.
Yeah, so imagine, being 2 years from now, he's like, oh, he's on the Steelers now for nothing. Mm-hmm. Just the potential there is something that I don't think anybody could pass up on.
I think if he makes a 53-man roster, it's a win for the Steelers. When you look at the fact that they didn't have to do they literally just signed to a reserves contract. It's not like they shelled out anything to him. All they did was give him a shot with a really good organization and structure, and said, "Let's see what you can do with it." If he makes the team, I think it's a win because it was low risk, literally the lowest risk possible. Exactly. And if the reward is literally anything, then it's a huge win for the Steelers.
Best case scenario, he's the starter. Worst case scenario, he sucks and you didn't lose anything. And even if it's in the middle, if he's just a stopgap starter for a couple years while you find a different quarterback, that can work too. There's just so many scenarios that work out for the Steelers with Dwayne Haskins.
Absolutely. Do we have anything else? I know that most of our crowd is probably here just to talk about the Steelers, but we do got to touch on the Pirates and Pens. But I don't know if anybody has anything else that I missed in the comments. I know people are just excited to see Haskins, man, as am I.
Excited to see Haskins. It's excited to see I think the Steelers in uniform in a real game. We said at the beginning of the show.
Eddie said, I promise if Dwayne Haskins pans out, the rest of the NFL will say it's rigged.
That's not the only thing around here that's rigged.
Away. Yeah, we've been getting that word thrown away a lot lately, so that makes perfect sense. Pens, the roster as it stands, Yeah, so let's just talk about the when's the last time the Pirates wrapped up the show?
I don't know, but we could talk about a few good players. So
but okay, let's switch gears to the Pens. By the way, Brock McGinn interview will be on Saturday. I'll just throw this out there and see what you guys think. We're doing the interview at 11 a.m. I don't know if you guys think that we should do it live. Would you be interested in tuning in that early, or should we just put up the video afterwards along with the podcast? Let us know. But let's talk about the Pens. First off, very new news. They got a new goalie coach, and it's funny because I literally just mentioned at lunch today to my dad and somebody else that we work with that I couldn't believe that wasn't the bare minimum of what they did in terms of goaltending. Like, if you're going into next season with Jarry and DeSmith, like you got to fire the goaltending coach, right? I mean, because you got to do something in terms of the way that the goaltending has been.
And now, by the way, it is Andy Chiodo. I believe I'm saying that.
Yeah. I didn't even mention his name. Yep.
Yeah, they let go of Mike Buckley. They hired Andy Chiodo, and now that they've done that, I feel like that's the only thing that they're going to do to address goaltending going into this season.
Definitely has that vibe because, I mean, like I said,
look at the free agents. There's absolutely no one there. It's just a pile of garbage in free agency right now. All the good ones, well, quote unquote good ones, are gone. And
Tuukka Rask is out till like January. He's the only intriguing option left.
Exactly. Trade, not really going to happen. I mean, do you really want Jonathan Quick? I really hope not. The only trade piece that I would really want is John Gibson. Not going to happen. Costs too much. And we're dealing with, I think we have listed as $1.8 million of cap space, but that's including Zahorna's contract on the NHL level. So if we move that down, then you'd have around $2.6 million of cap spape. They still have to sign Czar, so you figure he's going to get around $2 million.
It might be going to arbitration.
Yeah, I really hope they don't, because that could be a bad situation for both parts. But I just feel like there's no cap space. There's no goalies out there in free agency. A trade is too hard. You're going to be rolling into this next season with Jarry and DeSmith and now Andy Chiodo, and you better like it, Pens fans, because there's really no other option.
Yeah, I've kind of resigned to the fact that this is what they're going to do. This is the only move that they're going to make in terms of the goaltending situation as a whole going into next year. I think what the plan is, let's see how things go to start the season with this duo. If things go south, they'll make a move in season. But even then, it's like, we know how Hextall is with his assets. Like, do we really see him trading anything away to acquire goaltending? I don't know that I really do. And, unless it's like it's got to be a hockey trade, right? I mean,
hockey trade, I think it really depends on how bad the goaltending could be. Because if it's like real bad, then you have to do something. You can't just stay pat. But that brings me to another question, and I actually asked Josh Yohe this in his mailbag. I'm wondering if he'll answer that and curious what he thinks. But I'll ask you the same thing. How quick of a leash do you think that Jarry is going to have entering this next season?
That's the thing for me is like, is it even about the regular season? That's what's going to be tough to tell. It's like he could have, and we talked about this already. I said the exact same thing a few weeks ago. Like he could win the Vezina in the regular season. And that's not going to mean a damn thing if he does into the playoffs and does the exact same thing he did this year. So it's kind of hard to gauge where they're at with that. Like, he could be stellar in the regular season, and it doesn't really matter because we saw him falter already in the playoffs in his one shot. So as far as how short of a leash, I mean, the only thing that I'll say about it, because there's really no other way for me to gauge that, is he's not Hextall's guy. He didn't sign him to the extension, obviously didn't draft him. So he really doesn't have ties to him. The only reason that I'd be reserved on saying that he'd be willing to go out and make a splash is because that's never been Ron Hextall's thing. Like he hasn't made splashes in free agency or trades. That's part of the reason he's no longer in Phillies, because they said, he would always hold his cards. He would never be willing to give those up. He'd be the worst gambler in the world, probably.
Relatable.
So.
The only reason I ask that is because I feel like if you're rolling into next season and those are your guys, like you're not changing the goalie personnel, then I don't know how quick or how long of a leash you can give Jarry without going to DeSmith in some of these regular season games. Just because I feel like even though the regular season is not the postseason, you still have to win in the regular season to get to the postseason. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you can bank on Jarry being good and like working out of slumps for a long period of time. Like if he's losing like 2 or 3 games in a row, like you got to go to DeSmith.
I might have taken your question a different way. As far as like that, I could definitely see Sullivan going to DeSmith. But as far as like, I thought you meant how short of a leash. Like, what does he have to look like in the regular season for them to say, okay, we need to go acquire?
Oh, no. No, like how quickly would you be like? Would Sullivan be like, hey, okay, it's DeSmith, you're the guy?
I don't think. Yeah, I mean, I think that he'd be willing to do that at the drop of a hat, because I think that for sure we would have seen Casey DeSmith in the playoffs this year. Like, no question in my mind.
Yeah, I've thought about that. I'm like, when would you have brought him in? I would have assumed it would have been at the earliest game 5, like after game 4? Because, I mean, not just Jari in game 4 didn't look good, but the entire Penguins team didn't look good. But if you were
we
going
might
to
have seen
change the
him come
goalie,
in. Yeah, we might have seen him come in relief in game 4, but then start game 5 because of that.
yeah, like I feel like the only other time you would have seen him if he didn't come in for game 5 would have been game 6. Like, because I feel like game 5, like he wouldn't have come in at any time during that game. Jari didn't really play terribly throughout the entire game. He just had that terrible boneheaded play in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like, yes, he would have played, but would it have been too late at the point that he would have come in?
Possibly. Yeah, and like you said, that's kind of what's just so frustrating to me about it is like Jari has the talent to be a number 1 goaltender. It's just the mental things. Like we talked about it all the time. I keep bringing up past episodes of this show, but truthfully, like if you want to go back and listen, you can find these things. Like we talked about when he's at his best, he's wanting to handle the puck behind the net, and he's one of the best puck handling goalies in the league. And when you start to see him falter in that area, that's where you know he's just not right. And he's playing too deep in his crease, which is actually kind of a trait of his regardless. And we talked about that with Jesse, him and who's that goalie? Bruce Swan. He started out with Edmonton. I don't know where he is now. He just signed a new 2-year deal somewhere. But they came up together, and they're like the goalie academy or whatever that they went to was just so weird with their coaching style and philosophy, and that's kind of molded Jari into the goaltender that he is now. Which again, the talent is definitely there. I don't question that at all. I just question his mental part of the game, and if he has to be able to get past that if he's ever going to be a true number 1 goaltender, whether that's in Pittsburgh or somewhere else. But the whole point of this conversation, again, they do make one move in regards to the goaltending, bringing in a new goalie coach. So guess we'll see. But I definitely feel like they're going into the season now with Jari and DeSmith 1-2.
Yeah, so do I.
As an owner of a
but
Tristan Jari authentic reverse retro jersey, I'm not all that upset about it.
And here's the thing. I actually talked about with our friend Jamal today. I was texting him about the Penguins, and we were texting about Tristan. Yeah, we were texting about Tristan Jari, and I think the thing that we talked about was I'm not really upset with the idea of Tristan Jari being our starting goalie. I'm upset with the idea of no one pushing behind him to take his job, because Casey DeSmith is not going to take his job. Like this is not a 1A 1B scenario. Mm-hmm. So no one's pushing him to be better like Matt Murray was, like Matt Murray was for Marc-Andre Fleury. He doesn't really have that guy there. And if Tristan Jari, at least mentally, now I can't speak to what he's thinking, but to me, if you have no one behind you, you could be more relaxed, and you don't have to. I don't want to say he's not going to work as hard for it, but I just feel like it's a different scenario. And so
he feels like he's just kind of being handed the same job back.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like not even that I needed somebody to come in and just be the outright starter. Like if Tristan Jari was still the starter, that's fine. I would have just brought in somebody to help push him along the way to make him the
look
best
over his shoulder.
He can be.
Look at the way that when the Penguins won their 2 cups and were at their best that we've seen in our lifetime, they had 2 really good goalies that were pushing each other and felt like they had to be looking over their shoulder because the other guy could take their crease. Marc-Andre Fleury, Matt Murray, Tristan Jari, like Murray and Fleury, and then obviously Jari made the All-Star game the year that it was supposed to be Murray's net and kind of pushed him out of town. So, I mean, we've always had guys pushing each other when the goaltending was at its best. We don't, like you said, I mean, DeSmith's a fine backup, but he's not going to be that guy. You're not that guy, pal. So, yeah, you just feel like Jari's kind of just not complacent or anything like that, but he's not being pushed by anybody, like you said, and I think that's just probably the best way to put it. I won't try to find other words to say the exact same thing.
I hope he just shuts us all up. I hope he sees what everybody's been saying this summer. I mean, he probably doesn't even care what everybody's been saying this summer, but I hope that he takes this and be like, okay, I'm going to show you guys I can be the starting goalie, because I mean that's best for the team. So that's what I want. It's not like I want this guy to fail. Believe me, I don't think anybody wants him to fail. If he's going to be our goalie, we want him to be the best goalie in the world.
Let's talk about some more moves of the Pens offseason. Like we said, we mentioned already on Saturday morning, that sounds weird to say, we will be joined by new Penguins forward Brock McGinn. Let's just start there. A new 4-year deal for him in Pittsburgh. hasn't played in the NHL besides in Carolina. That's where he's called home his entire NHL career. He's been a pretty good player for them, and we've seen that in our mentions, literally. When we signed Brock McGinn, just the way that people were talking about him in Carolina, they loved him there, kind of like a heart and soul guy for them. Like beyond their captain, Jordan Staal, it was Brock McGinn that people talk about when they talk about being the heart and soul of that team.
Yeah, I had no idea that the GIF or the video of them doing the storm surge where the player like spiked down his stick in the middle, I had no idea that was him. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I knew that it was all right, the move, because to be honest, I didn't really know much about Brock McGinn.
I knew that he was the one that scored the goal to eliminate the Capitals. And
I did know that. He bodied out Tom Wilson. I did know that. But I think the thing that I didn't know was like how much Carolina fans like this guy, because when you look at their thank you tweet to Brock McGinn and like the announcement that he was going to Pittsburgh, it was just Carolina fans like saying, "Oh, like we're gonna miss him. He was a good player. He was a good guy." So like that was encouraging to see as a Penguin fan. And then you get into the analytics of what everybody's saying about Brock McGinn, and we find out he's basically like our replacement for Brandon Tanev, except he's cheaper and he could be better. Offense. Yeah.
So, so he's not going to be as fast. And I think that's what people are going to lose, because Brandon Tanev flies around like a maniac and leads the team in hits. And that's not going to be Brock McGinn's style. But it will be interesting to see if he's the first guy that gets a shot with those two because of some of the defensive metrics historically that he brings. Now, wasn't that great in that area last year, but like you said, if he's kind of more of an offensive upside. Like he has a year where he scored 16 goals. He had another year where he scored 10, he scored 7, he scored 7 twice, he scored 8. So I mean, he provides a little bit more offense than Brandon Tanev, and now we're talking about him maybe being able to play in an expanded role. Like if it's not with those guys, could we see him, bump up on the third line with Jeff Carter, or will we even see him in a top 6 role potentially? Like he's the type of guy that I feel like should we see an injury to one of those guys, like a knock on wood, Gensel, Zucker, somebody like that, we could see a guy like Brock McGinn step into the top 6 and be that first guy given a shot to play up.
Yeah. Brock McGinn, when he was playing with Sebastian Aho and Teuvo Teravainen, Teuvo Teravainen. He had 7 goals in the first, I think, 11 or 12 games with Carolina. So I know he has the scoring touch, and when he's playing with good players, he can score.
It also looks like he's like obviously not like snake bitten is the right word or anything, but he shoots a pretty low shooting percentage. If he were to get that up to like literally 9.6, like if that was an average number, I mean, and he's a play driver too, which I don't think a lot of people, again, if you just watch it with the eye test, you won't see those types of things. But I do think that he's going to be a very good player for the Penguins. I think he's going to fit right in with what they're trying to do. And the only thing, again, you just kind of wonder, like, when did the going rate become 4+ years for bottom 6 guys? Like Brandon Tanev broke the spectrum.
Whenever Jim Rutherford signed Brandon Tanev to a 6-year deal, that's it.
He completely broke the NHL.
You're not going to sign a bottom 6 forward for less than 4 years now. Won't happen.
Speaking
unless
of
their name is Danton Heinen.
Okay. Well, now that you brought that name up, we might as well just talk about him. This one is very intriguing because this guy looked like he was going to be a very good player in Boston. Moves on to Anaheim and has had a down couple of years, but he's still pretty young, just 26 years old. So his career has definitely not been defined yet. He has a year where he scored 16 back in 17-18, 11 goals the following year, 10 goals the following year, almost at 50 points actually, 2017-2018. 16 goals, 31 assists, 47 points. But then, like I said, 2019, he gets traded to Anaheim, and you see kind of the cliff that he's fallen off of since being there. Still scored 7 goals last year, but that's not the player that he looked like he was going to be in Boston.
Here's the thing. I know that the analytics and the player card said like he hasn't had a great couple years the past few years, and I get that. I'm big into analytics. I respect all that, but I feel like you can't overlook the fact that he went from Boston to going to Anaheim. You can't overlook that. Anaheim the past couple of years has been one of the worst teams in the entire National Hockey League, and when you look at his numbers, like his point totals when he was in Boston, 47, 34, 26, 22, and from a bottom 6 forward. Those are amazing numbers. And then you go to Anaheim And he had, well, in 2019-20, he had 4 points in 9 games. But then this year, he had 14 points in 43 games. But then you go look at his Corsi percentage. And his Corsi, it was all positive in Boston. 56.1, 57.6, 55.8, 52.5, 53.6. Then as soon as he gets to Anaheim, 47.2, 48.5. I feel like there's a trend there. I feel like it's not a coincidence that his stats got worse whenever he went to Anaheim. I feel like his team that he was playing on definitely took a toll on his production. So I'm really not worried about this signing. I'm actually encouraged by it because I see what he could do in Boston. I feel like I would like to compare ourselves closer to Boston than I would to Anaheim. And I say we're more like a team like that. So I'm hoping that he could probably get back closer to what the production was in Boston as opposed to Anaheim. I feel like there's on the surface, sure, it just looks like we're signing a scrub bottom 6, but like when you dive deeper into it and just look at what the situations were, I feel like we should be more encouraged about Danton Heinen this year than a lot of people think we should.
I think he's going to play with Jeff Carter, and I really like that combination. Just look out how those two would pair together in their styles. Because I mean, he can play center. I think he's going to play left wing, and I think sliding him in with Jeff Carter, which to start the season that actually could be in a second line role, because we really have no idea what's going on with Gino right now. Like people are saying, oh, he could be ready to start the season. People are saying he's going to miss a month. People are saying he's going to miss 3 months. It's up in the air right now. So let's just assume the best. We're still expecting Danton Heinen to be with Jeff Carter to start the season. Moving on to another signing, more of a re-signing, if you will. Dominic Simone is back in the organization. Now, this is a two-way deal, so if you're not a Dom Simone truther like us, don't get all worked up. There's a chance he doesn't even play in the NHL at all next year.
He probably won't. I would assume he probably wouldn't start there.
What a terrible year for him in Calgary, though. I mean, it's just crazy that, and he's one of those guys that we talk about. It's so weird to say, but it's like either he's a first liner or he's not cracking your lineup. But that's how it is with the Penguins because of how good he is with Sid and then what he looks like away from Sid. And that's how I felt a lot of times about Connor Sherry's tenure in Pittsburgh as well. But Dom Simone kind of fits that mold too, where it's like if he's not playing with Crosby, I'm not so sure that this guy is going to be in the lineup. And that's why, like you said, to start the season, I don't think he will be. And the only way that we'll see him is, if an injury or two happens and he's going to take a role in the top 6 temporarily.
Yeah, I think he'll start in Wilkes-Barre because when I was shaking down the lines, I just went through it. I'm like, okay, you got Sid, Jake, and Russ in the top line. You got Carter, and I just put Zucker and Kapanen next to him on the second line. And then for the third line, Bluger, McGinn, and Czar. And then the fourth line, you probably have Rodriguez centering that line or Heinen. And then you have Heinen on the wing on that line. And then really slot whoever you want on that fourth line right wing because I honestly have no idea. It could be Radim Sahorna, it could be Anthony Angelo, it could be I have no. I mean, it could be Dom Simone, but like, what's he going to do there? He doesn't really have the finish.
Yeah.
So
I don't think he fits your typical fourth line role. I mean, I want to have guys. I want to be able to roll 4 lines and have offense on each one. But you mentioned the name that I was going to bring up. Obviously, they brought him back. He was another guy that they had to re-sign, Radim Sahorna. Now, what's interesting about his contract is it's a 2-way deal, year 1 of it. Second year, it's just a 1-way deal. So it's kind of like they're hoping he gets a little bit more seasoning this year, and maybe he does play in the NHL, but it's like definitely the following year he will be in the NHL for them. So they obviously have high hopes for him, but still trying to get a little bit more acclimated with North American ice, obviously. I mean, obviously you got to love the size, but he moves so well for somebody his size too, which is very odd because the scouting reports that was the one really big knock was he doesn't move well due to how big he is. I didn't see, I understand it was a small sample size. I did not see anything to back up that scouting report while watching him last year. I think he's like a perfect, and I mean perfect, like your stereotypical fourth liner. And it's going to be interesting to see what he can do if given that opportunity, like actually that opportunity to play at a full capacity and not just somebody's injured, let's see him for 3 games.
No, I think they do want him in a bigger capacity, and not necessarily that it rigged. We've been hearing that a lot. Not necessarily that he fits the fourth line role and that the fact that he's a bruiser. Like, even though he's 6'6", 220, that's just not the style of play. But if the Penguins were focused on getting bigger and getting stronger, I feel like that's a guy that does help that. He's not going to play like that style necessarily, but he has a bigger body. He could help out. And like we saw, I mean, he only played maybe 8 games last year or so, but he did move around better than what you would think a 6'6", 220 guy would. So yeah, that's encouraging. I think they have a lot of options for that fourth line right wing or whatever winger it is. But I feel like the other 11's forward spots, at least to start the season, are pretty much, I don't want to say set in stone, but I think you can pretty much pencil them in. Like, okay, we know these guys are playing. We just don't know where they are in the lineup. That 12th man is really who we're looking for.
Right. Yeah, and the rest of their offseason has kind of just been, two-way contracts. We saw them sign defenseman Taylor, Fadun from Dallas. It's a two-way deal. Michael Chaput to a two-way contract as well. Was that it? I think that was pretty much it for them.
Now, can I bring up something?
Yeah.
And our buddy Danny wrote an article about it yesterday, so go check that out with Pittsburgh.
I know this.
Yeah. I think when Malkin comes back, you need to play Zucker with Crosby, or at least try it. Are they going to do it? Absolutely not. It's not going to happen. But I feel like they should. If you read that article,
Gensel or Rust?
Gensel.
Okay.
And honestly, burn the world down and move Rust down and put Simone on the top line. Just make everybody hate everything.
Oh man, Zucker and Simone. That would be. Fans would hate it.
They would hate it, but if it worked, it worked. I mean, I don't care. If Simone is the guy that can't finish but drives plays for Crosby and Zucker to score, who cares?
But that's what I'm saying is Zucker's been that player as well. He's been the play driver that can't finish as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you read through Danny's article, it does go to show, like, I mean, he has absolutely no chemistry with Evgeny Malkin. We've seen that. It just hasn't worked. He did have some chemistry with Sidney Crosby, and the negative numbers that they did have only happened when Jack Johnson was on the ice with them. Go figure. Yeah. So I feel like you should at least try it. I mean, I don't know how big into analytics Mike Sullivan is, but I feel like Katarina Wu should look at Danny's article and be like, okay, Mike, listen to this kid.
Danny just needs to take the role that Sam Ventura was in for sure.
Exactly. I just think that it makes too much sense. You're paying this guy $5.5 million to score goals for you. He's obviously not going to do that with Evgeny Malkin, so you might as well try to do that with Sidney Crosby, where he looked decent for his first little stretch with the Penguins. And I think that Gensel with your boys are going to love Brock. I'm sure we will. I think that Gensel with Gino is fine. We've seen that before in stretches where Sid has been out. We know those two can play together. Zucker and Crosby seem to be a better pair for Zucker. So I feel like that has to be something that they look at.
It's not as much of a sample size, but like Gensel was scoring at a 40-goal pace when he was playing with Gino before his shoulder injury. So
he's a 40-goal scorer with both of them.
Yeah, we've seen it work. So
it doesn't matter which one.
If that's what it takes to get Zucker to be the player we thought we were getting from Minnesota, and we know Gensel's still going to be fine away from Crosby, yeah, why not do it? It's just a matter of convincing Sid that he can play without Jake. Let Jake go to a different line, and also convincing Sullivan.
I would say, do you think it's more so convincing Sid that he can play without Jake, or is it convincing Mike Sullivan?
Well, not convincing Sid that Sid knows that he can play without Jake. I just know for a fact how much he likes playing with him. So it's like, does he want him off of his line? I think Sid knows that he will be fine without Jake, and Jake will be fine without him. But it's more so just they have that chemistry that they've built over years now. Like,
well, here's the thing. Give it a scenario. Malkin comes back. They put Zucker and Kapanen back with Malkin. Malkin looks good with Kapanen, I'm sure. That duo looked good last year. I'm hoping that it goes over into this year as well. But if Zucker is cold, say for like 10, 12 games, you can't just keep him on that line. You have to switch it up to do something. And I don't think you want to bump him down to the third line. I mean, I guess you could with Jeff Carter to see how that works. But I feel like the logical answer is moving on up with Sid. I agree with Danny on this one.
Yeah. Okay, if you agree with Danny on that, maybe you'll agree with Danny on this as well, because he said you can't have Zucker on the third line because he's not interested in paying $5.5 million for a third line player who rarely plays on special teams.
I mean, I agree with that too. I guess. That's a little different for my agreements. That's just, do I want to have a $5.5 million playing on the third line? But yeah, I just feel like he's a top 2 winger, and if the second line isn't working, move him on to the first.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to the last thing that we want to talk about, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the best team in Pittsburgh, obviously.
Best team that Pittsburgh's playing right now. We could say that for one more day.
That's true. When you talk about the Pirates, how do you not start and talking about Brian Reynolds? I mean, the dude's been unreal this year. Legitimately, if the Pirates were a better team, I think that he's making a case for MVP. And I've seen people debate if he still should be considered for MVP, just because you look at the history of the MVP, and it's not always awarded to a guy on, a playoff contender or just the best player on the best team. So where is your opinion on this? I know where mine is, but I'll let you go first.
I think that I think that if your team is this bad, I know that the MVP award, like, it shouldn't matter, but at the same time, like, I don't know. I don't think he should win the MVP. Finalist, I'm fine with that. I don't know that he should win it.
Yeah, I was going to say, throw the historical part of it aside, because my opinion of that wouldn't have changed. It's like, MVP to me doesn't mean best player. If it's supposed to, you got to change the name of the award. But, like, if you're talking about MVP, I don't care about who the most valuable player was to a team that was terrible. Like, it has to be a team that's in the mix, probably makes the playoffs, and then who is most valuable to that team. And I going through the NL right now, it's just tough, though, because now Tatis is out again for a second time this season. Jacob deGrom, who had a case, even though he was a pitcher, he's been shut down until the start of September. So he's missing an extended period of time now as well. It's just tough. Like, who is the NL MVP right now? Like, looking at some advanced stats, it might tell you that Max Muncy should have a case. Because I saw his name up there for, like, WAR leaders in the NL.
What about Freddie Freeman?
But Atlanta's bad, so that's kind of like yeah.
It's a tough call, for sure. But still, I don't think he should win MVP. I think
that's the base of the conversation. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he should win MVP. If he was a finalist, that'd be great. I mean, if he continues to play that he has the next 2 months,
should they give it to Adam Frazier for the Padres?
You might as well. Just have Adam Frazier and Brian Reynolds in the MVP final. Oh, could you imagine?
That's why it's funny, because like so many of the like leaders or in that ballpark in a lot of these categories have changed teams. Like Trey Turner's second in batting average. He's now with the Dodgers. Frazier leads the league in hits. Trey Turner's second. Jesse Winker plays on a team that's they're kind of in the mix, I guess, because of being in the Central. And then Freddie Freeman. Kyle Schwarber switched teams. He's now in the AL, but he was up there in home runs. Eduardo Escobar moved from the Diamondbacks to the Brewers, but he's up there in a lot of these categories. Adam Duvall is like fifth in RBIs. Like a lot of guys change teams that are up there.
It's funny because like most years you have a guy that is the like clear and away favorite for the MVP. I feel like, and this year you don't have that. You've got a lot of guys that you can make cases for. I mean, the fact that we even, he very well still might win it. But I feel like most years you have one guy that is so far ahead of everybody else, it's not even a question. And then you have a couple guys that'll be like close to being finalists. This year, like Tatis might win it, but the fact that we're even questioning whether Brian Reynolds could be in the conversation is insane to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's testament to how good he's been for the Pirates. And like I tweeted earlier, that the Pirates traded their 2010s Andrew McCutchen for their 2020s Andrew McCutchen. They should
build around now. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it's and he's doing it without much lineup protection as well. Because, the guy that we want to see the Pirates build around along with Brian Reynolds is Brian Hayes. He has not been good. I mean, 0 for 17?
Yeah.
Slump right now. But this is going back a while that he hasn't looked like the player that we expect him to be. And I'm not worried about him, long term or anything like that. But I put this out there today, and it's I don't have any information to, prove this or disprove this. I think that he's still not right, that wrist, and I don't think he's going to be right until next year, and we're not going to see the real Ke'Bryan Hayes until 2022. We saw, a short spurt of it when he first came back where he looked okay, but, for long stretches now, for the better part of the season, he has not looked like the Ke'Bryan Hayes that we expect to see.
Yeah, I saw someone say last night and questioning whether his swing looked like it got longer instead of shorter like you want it. And maybe that would have to do with his wrist injury still being lingering there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like you said, it's all speculation on your part, but you could have some substance there. But I like you said as well, I'm not really worried about Ke'Bryan Hayes for the future. We know the type of player that he is. And, I mean, look at Brian Reynolds last year, the year that he had in 2020.
Yeah.
And so just because people go through slumps, we know that doesn't define them as a baseball player. That's just the name of the sport. We saw Andrew McCutchen go through plenty of slumps whenever he was winning MVP. So
yeah.
I feel like it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it is concerning right now, but it begs the question, like, why is it this way? Because, I mean, for a player like him, 0 for 17 isn't exactly like normal. You would think he would at least get one hit in there.
Yeah. And there was a point in time where it's like he was kind of, and we were all making fun of like the reporters, and not even like Pirates reporters, literally like just people in the media, like saying that he was slumping because he was hitting like 220 or something like that. But at that time, he was still like hitting rockets. Now it hasn't been that way for a while. He's striking out a lot, just completely missing the bat. So right now he's just not right. And I think it's still a lingering issue for him. Do you have anything else for the Pirates, or can we wrap up with Three Rivers?
My only thing is I just looked at their record. Do you think they're going to lose 100 games still?
What are they at now after today's loss?
They are at 41-67.
So they need 33 more losses. How many more games does that mean? 40? What do you say? 40? What?
41-67. So they're at 108 games played. So they have 54 games left.
So they would need to go.
They would
32 to not lose 100.
Yeah.
I'm going to say they don't lose 100. Excuse me. I think they have one more like mini, not hot streak, but decent stretch of baseball left in them down the stretch here.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I know we both said that they would lose around 100 games, so we're getting there. There's only 2 months left of baseball.
They haven't gotten a sweep yet, which is crazy.
They haven't swept anybody.
They've had like 9 attempts to get a sweep and haven't done it.
They should have swept the Giants last week.
Yeah, they've had a lot of opportunities to do it, and they were up like 4-0 in that game too. Okay. So moving on to Three Rivers Rapid Responses by Viget. As always, to wrap up the show, you can download the Viget app using the word Crowworthy when you sign up. That's CROWWORTHY. Get at us, and we will get you in our leaderboard when you do so. Again, that is Viget. You can find that in the Apple Store. If you have Android, what's that even called? Google Play Store.
Play Store, yeah.
All right, so again, Three Rivers Rapid Responses. Let's do this. Give your honest thoughts. This isn't so much a question, but I want you to tell the people your honest thoughts as quickly as you can on training camp as a whole, your experience at training camp. Because I think it's most different.
Rated. Everybody hypes it up like it's the best thing in the world, and I do not get it. We went a couple years ago whenever it was at Latrobe, and we were like, why do people like this? I don't understand it. I mean, it's cool. Right. It's cool to see them practice. I mean, maybe my experience at Latrobe, or our experience at Latrobe, wasn't the best just because they didn't practice on the one field. Watt wasn't practicing, like yada yada yada, whatever. But still, I mean, even being there on Saturday, like it was fun. It's cool to go, but it's not something that I'm like getting hyped up for to do. Like it's not like something that I would look forward to doing every single year. It's just I don't have that connection to it, and I'm sure a lot of people do. I'm sure a lot of people have great memories at your training camp. For me, vastly overrated.
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody. Like you mentioned, it was kind of just like the perfect storm to be a bad day at training camp. Like, I don't think Ben practiced that day. TJ Watt was hurt. They didn't use the field closest to us. The one thing that was cool is that was the same day. Everybody knows that viral picture where that guy was dressed in like the Palomalu stuff, the 43 jersey.
Yeah,
that was that same day that we were there at practice. So that's
really
cool to say. Like,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's pretty neat.
That was that same day that we were there. So that's kind of cool to say that we were at that training camp practice. But I overall agree with the sentiment where it's like, if I don't get, like, it was cool to go because we just spent the whole day in the city. We went to Pepe's after, then we went to the Pirate game on Saturday. But if I didn't go,
our day wouldn't have been ruined by not going to training camp. We still could have gone Pepe's and Pirate game would have been fine.
Yeah. You guys could have played some virtual blackjack. It would have all been good.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I won money. All right.
Okay, go ahead.
So, back to hockey for this question. Will the Penguins add someone to their NHL roster before they start training camp? And by that, I don't just mean signing. I mean, like, they could trade someone and like do a trade. Do you think their roster will stay the same before NHL training camp?
Yes. The only thing that's so confusing to me is, like, I have no idea what they're doing about defense because I just kept waiting for them to open up a spot for POJ. And it's like the only way that was going to happen, like, we could say maybe they move Matheson, but they would have gotten nothing for a return. Like, the only way to ensure that you're opening up a spot for POJ while also getting something for the player was to move Marcus Pettersson. And I understand. Listen, I don't have a problem with Marcus Pettersson being on this team because he's a stabilizer for John Marino. We saw what John Marino was like away from him, so that would be a concern if you move Pettersson. But I just was fully expecting that to happen. With where we're at right now, I'm going to say that I expect this team to open up the same way that they look right now.
I have to agree with you. The only move that I could see happening is that Marcus Pettersson trade, and I feel like we probably would have seen it by now.
The market was so good. If you were looking to move a defenseman
around the draft, it would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Okay, so now switching gears to the Steelers, specifically the wide receiver room.
Okay.
So this is for multiple. So I guess you could look at this as multiple questions, but all tied into one. Who will lead the Steelers in each receiving category? So catches, yards, and touchdowns.
Okay. I will say that Deontay Johnson leads the Steelers in touchdowns.
Okay.
I will say Juju leads them in catches. And I will say Deontay Johnson leads them in yards.
So you don't think Claypool's going to lead any category?
Not of those three, no.
Okay. So my answer for that would be different for all three.
Okay.
I think Claypool leads them in touchdowns. I think Deontay leads them in yards, and I think Juju leads them in catches, just because I don't think that we're going to see hopefully we don't see the exact same version of Juju where they just essentially turn him into a running back. But I think with the routes that he runs, like, he's going to be that insurance guy, almost like a security blanket for Ben, and dump it off to him. So looks like Jake agrees with me, right? That's the exact same thing I said.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing you and I differed on was the touchdowns. I had Deontay.
By the way, Jake Shavank NFL, go subscribe to his YouTube channel. I saw he was starting to put content out again after a little break, but he also just recently put out his first 2022 NFL mock draft. So regardless of who you're a fan of, if it's not the Steelers,
Jake, you are such a nerd.
And if for some reason watching or listening to this right now and you're not a Steelers fan, you can still go check out who he's got your favorite team taking. I know he has us taking a tackle, which I'm completely fine with.
Sounds good here. Okay, next. This is not sports related. Besides Twitter, because I know that's number one.
Yeah.
What is the one app on your phone that you could not go without?
Yeah, you saw I deactivated my Twitter for about 14 hours. So.
Yeah, well, most of that you were probably sleeping, so that doesn't even count.
The one app I cannot go without, YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube on my phone, literally every single day. So I would have to say it's that. Like Instagram, I'd go full days without going on anyway. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Snapchat. So for me, it's probably YouTube.
Personally, it would be basically a coin toss between YouTube and TikTok.
Oh God, here we go.
What?
See, this is why. the TikTok's the reason the Steelers can't win any games, meaningful games, and you being on TikTok is the reason that we can't win any of Pittsburgh City Papers awards.
That's true.
It's detrimental to the podcast.
Listen, not to flame anybody that was nominated. I mean, congrats on being nominated. I haven't heard of any of you. I haven't.
I know of two of them because I reached out to them when we first launched the Pod Hub Network.
Oh, okay. So. I was like, I haven't heard of any of these guys. All right, but wait, it's your turn. What am I doing?
So, I know that we don't live directly in the city of Pittsburgh, so maybe you won't be able to answer this, and I'll have to change the question. Okay. Do you have like a hot take when it comes to Pittsburgh food?
Pittsburgh food. I mean, actually, well, I feel like this is a hot take that I've said multiple times on our show over the past few years. Pepe's is better than Permani's.
Okay, so I figured you might go with that, but I was gonna see if you would change course. I didn't know if you were gonna say like fries aren't that good on sandwiches or like
no, because they are.
Yeah,
fries are amazing on everything, so I can't use that as a hot take. I
know that we haven't really dove into the Pittsburgh pizza scene too much,
right?
Which I feel like we should and like make a video, but that's a separate topic.
Yeah, so I feel like I don't really know enough about like Pittsburgh food or like Pittsburgh restaurants enough. Like we don't eat there enough. But that's something that I will say. Pepe's is greater than Permani's. Unless they sponsor us.
And we were just at Pepe's on Saturday, and I completely agree with that. Great. I mean, they're just great people, by the way. Like, you feel like they're just like your friends.
Great atmosphere.
When you walk in there. Yeah. All
right, last question. This is for tomorrow night's game against the Dallas Cowboys in the Hall of Fame game.
Betting odds?
Well, kind of. I know Mason Rudolph is the starting quarterback, but I'm assuming that we're going to see Dwayne Haskins get some time. Under.
Did you see what Tomlin said?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, Haskins is finishing the first half because it's like they want to have like the 2-minute drill specifically for two guys. Okay. So even though Rudolph's starting, Haskins, I don't know when he'll come in, but he's definitely finishing the first half, and Dobbs will play the second half.
Like he'll start the second half, or Haskins will start?
So he's going to finish the second half, but I didn't know if that meant he's going to play the whole second half. So I don't know if it's like Rudolph first quarter, then Haskins second and third, and Dobbs fourth. Like, I don't know.
Well, I'm hoping that Haskins plays enough for this question because I was asking Haskins over under 1.5 passing touchdowns.
I'll say over because Dallas's defense stinks. I can't imagine what their second team defense looks like.
Okay. I respect that.
Yeah. Like I think that, I mean, it's so hard to say what's going to happen in a preseason game. These guys haven't completely gelled. But one connection that we have seen in training camp quite a bit is Dwayne Haskins and Rico Bussey. Like, I'm looking for them to have a field day tomorrow night against Dallas's reserves.
I guess that's one thing that we did not talk about was Rico Bussey.
Did I not bring him up when I was talking about standouts?
No.
I might not have. Because now that after I said his name the first time, I was like, did I say that name yet? But yeah, he's been a stand. Like, he's pushing for the Steelers to potentially keep 6 wide receivers.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Do you think they would?
I think it would take a really strong. Like, he would need to continue to have the training camp he's had so far. Plus pretty much every week. Like, I mean, think about it. Like, we always have a guy like this. Every single year, there's a receiver that makes the Steelers think about keeping 6 receivers. There's that one year it was DeMonte Patterson. They didn't do it. They didn't keep him. He ended up going to like Tampa Bay or New England or something like that. He's not in the league anymore. So it's like these training camp preseason standouts you got to be weary of. But if there's somebody that knows receivers, it's Pittsburgh Steelers.
Maybe the Steelers look to trade a guy like James Washington and then add Rico Bussey to the starting 5.
I'm all for it. Listen, James Washington, he is – I feel like Steeler fans that follow me on Twitter are like, this guy hates James Washington. What's going on here? I like James Washington. I think he's a contributor to the wide receiver room. I also firmly believe he is absolutely no higher than 4th on the depth chart. He doesn't have the chance to climb that at all, barring an injury. And he's a bit of a one-trick pony for me. He's not great at separating. He's not a great route runner. He doesn't have top-flight speed. Like, what does he do at an elite level to make people think so highly of him? He's fine. He's just an all-around okay receiver.
He's a solid wide receiver. Like, that's really
if they got a 4th-round pick for him, for 1 year, because he's a free agent after this year. I don't expect him to come back to Pittsburgh because, like I said, there's just too many people in front of him on the pecking order.
They'll probably draft another receiver next year. Who knows?
Yeah. For 1 year of James Washington, if they could get like a 4th-round pick, and I would be fine with a 5th, to be honest with you as well. But if they could get a 4th, that'd be great. I would make that deal yesterday.
I don't know. We'll see. Probably not going to happen, but we will see.
Absolutely not. But yeah, the only way that it would happen, I think, if James Washington were kind of forced to Steelers' hand and say he was kind of like upset in the situation he was in, but that's not. James Washington doesn't seem
like that guy. Yeah,
he's not that guy, pal. I think that about wraps it up.
Yep. That was a good show with just the two of us. I'm glad we know how to still do this.
Yeah, we don't need a guest to carry us all the time, contrary to popular belief. But we will have a guest on Saturday. So, pens forward, Brock McGinn. Yeah. Pens forward, Brock McGinn will join the show. Again, it's going to be at 11 a.m. I saw Ricky say he wanted us to live stream it because he will be on his way to training camp. So it'd be cool if he had something to watch / listen to. If you're driving, I don't know that I'd be watching us while you're driving, but we're not going to advise one way or another against that.
Also, if you're going to training camp, just ignore what I said. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah,
no offense to it. It's just me personally, not my thing. Listen,
it depends on what you're going for, and
if you want to
got to go with the understanding you're not getting autographs. So
you want to flame me? Renegade's overrated. Come at me.
There. Oh wait. Wait. Mine. Never mind. My question was food specifically.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh food hot take, because that could have been a good one. All right. Well, anyways, guys, as you know, Rocking Around the 412 is kicked off again, so you can follow us on Twitter at Around the 412. It is our pinned tweet there. We'll take you to the GoFundMe link to donate. If you are new here and don't know what the mission's about, every year we raise as much money as possible. Every single cent that is donated goes to families in our area to provide Christmas for them. That's toys, electronics. So like the last time, Nintendo Switches were very popular. Literally every family that we did last year for Christmas, they got a Nintendo Switch. Clothes, makeup, books, art supplies, literally anything you can think of. Gift cards, and then whatever's left, we also get a like Walmart or Aldi's gift card for them to be able to go out and get like a holiday meal or groceries for the holiday meal to be able to have that along with just the full, like literally when I say Christmas in its entirety, that's exactly what it is for everybody. So donate to the cause if you can. At least share it, please. Again, if you're following us on Twitter at Around the 412, it's our pinned tweet, so it's right there. All the information can be found on the GoFundMe link. I also put up a YouTube video, which I think is in that tweet as well, that kind of gives you the breakdown a little bit more in depth of where everything's going. But other than that, I got to tell you guys about our sponsor, Teach Barbershop, and we will get out of here. Teach Barbershop is an old-fashioned barbershop. It's located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. He's open 11 to 7 Tuesday through Friday, 10 to 4 on Saturday, and every Tuesday he does $5 off for military personnel, first responders, and nurses. Again, that's Teach Barbershop at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of Around the 412. This has been a presentation of Crowworthy, where winners are serving winners coast to coast for sports, gambling, fantasy, and more. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Around the 412. Follow them at Crowworthy Takes, and visit the Pittsburgh City page at crowworthy.com for podcasts just like this one, blogs, and so much more. We will see you guys Saturday, but until then, bye-bye.